So in this video, we're going to talk about how to pronounce Latin. I am not sure if you guys really learned a lot about how to do that last year, but it's something that I believe very strongly in. I believe that we should always read Latin aloud before we really start to tackle its meaning. And there are reasons for that, which I think will become clearer to you once you continue your study of Latin. So let's see. First thing, C's are always like K's in Latin. It's always k, never s. Okay, so if we look at the the three words here, Claudia, that's how you pronounce her name, Claudia. This word down here is pronounced campus. What word do we get in English from that? Obviously, spelled the same way, campus, like a college campus. Campus in Latin means field. And then another popular ancient Roman name for a woman, Cornelia. Cornelia, C's like K's. Now, V's are always pronounced like W's. So this first word, it looks like vaca, but it's pronounced waka. Waka, as in flaca. And what does waka mean? It actually means cow. English words that come from that, it's kind of hard to see, but the word vaccine actually comes from it. The world's first vaccine dealt with cowpox, if I'm remembering that correctly. Somebody should look that up and tell me if I'm right or wrong on that one. So that's waka. And then the Latin word that basically means hello is salve. Not salve or salve, but salve. Salve. And an English word that comes from salve, it's kind of hard to see it in some ways, but the person who basically greets you at a graduation ceremony, that's the technical meaning of it, is the salutatorian. Obviously, that would be the person who has the second highest GPA in the class. Now, how do you say goodbye in Latin? Well, here it is. Vale, that's how it's pronounced. Vale. And, the person who says goodbye at the graduation ceremony would be the valedictorian, the first in the class. So, C's like K's, V's like W's. Moving on. G's are always g, never j. So, looking at this verb, agus and ago are the ways that you would pronounce those words. Now, if the letter I begins a word and the next letter is also a vowel, then the I is pronounced like a Y. If it's followed by a consonant, it's just pronounced I. But if it's followed by a vowel, it's pronounced Y. So Unia and Julia and Julius. So his full name would be Gaius Julius Caesar. Moving on, H, always H, as in this word hike and horologium. There's a little bit of dispute about whether the H was pronounced at all, but I tend just to pronounce it to make things a little simpler. Now let's talk about these basic vowels. So if you see the vowel A by itself, it's always pronounced ah. It's never ah, always ah. If you see E and there's no what we call long mark over it, it's pronounced as in bed. Okay, and we'll talk about perhaps a very slight difference in pronunciation later on when you see it with a long mark. And the letter I is pronounced like an E, as in C. So this first word, M-I-H-I, would be pronounced, look at the I, it's like an E, so it's mihi. And then the second word, nomen, the E is in bed, nomen, est, and then this is where people always get thrown off. They want to say mihi nomen est Antonia, but remember it's always it's never so it's mihi nomen est Antonia. Okay, O's are always as in the word hope, as in these two words down here, which are both numbers, duo, which I'm sure you figured out is 2, and Nowem, which is 9. What English word comes from Nowem? Well, that would be November, which is the 11th month, not the 9th month. But I think Miss Richardson taught you guys that last year the Roman calendar initially began in the month of March and went through December. It only had 10 months. And so after a while, the Romans kind of got lazy and just labeled them the 5th month, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then Rome's second king, named Numa Pompilius, came along and figured out, the seasons are all out of whack. We've done something wrong. We need to add in 2 more months. And so he added in January and February. But the Romans kept the names for basically for September through December. So there you have it. Now, the U is always oo, as in duo, and quatuor. So oo. Now the A and the U together, 2 vowels oftentimes together make up what's called a diphthong. And a diphthong basically is where you have 2 vowels, but they essentially make one sound. And the AU is always pronounced ow, like you've been hurt, ow. So if we look at this first word, which means, as you could probably take a guess, it means cause or reason for something, it's pronounced causa. And then here we have the goddess of the dawn, also a good coffee shop. And it's pronounced in Latin aurora. I think we say aurora in English, but in Latin it would be aurora. And then the A and the E are always pronounced sort of like an I, or you could say a Y, as in the word my. So this word, which means moons, is pronounced lunai. What words in English come from this? Of course, lunar, but also lunatic, which is somebody who's too fond of yelling at the moon. And then if Caecilius from our stories had a daughter, then her name would have been Kai. That's how the AE is pronounced, like an I. Caecilia. Now the TH is pronounced really like a T, just like a T sound, as in the word Thomas. It's never pronounced the. So this word down here, although we want to look at it and rush to say, hey, it looks like cathedral, so we should say cathedra. It's actually catedra. All right, moving on. CH is always like a K, really, as in chaos. It's never cha. That was a later thing in the Middle Ages. So this word is pronounced carta. And a carta is basically just like a sheet of paper, essentially. And then you can probably guess what this word means. Stomachus there. CH, like a K. And then finally, the PH is like a P, as in put. It's never pronounced f, as it is in English, often. So instead of saying elephantus, it would be elepantus. Elepantus. And then this last word here, which of course is where the Roman gladiators would compete, it's a tough one to say because you've got the PH and you also have the TH. So remember, the PH is P and the TH is T. Amphitheatrum. And you might have noticed that a couple of times I have pronounced this E not as in as in bed, but I pronounced it almost like an A, as in amphitheatrum. That's because some words, the E is pronounced like an A, and you'll know it because it'll have a long mark over it. Now, I got kind of lazy, and I just didn't draw the long marks in this particular PowerPoint, but you'll see the long marks in your book, and they're always pronounced like A's. So let's practice really quickly by looking at the very, 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 very first story in Latin that you ever read last year. It was in stage 1, all about our friendly dog. And first thing we want to know is how do you pronounce his name? In English, we say Cerberus, but in Latin, the C is like a K. Notice how there are no long marks over these E's, so we're going to pronounce them like Kerberus is how you would pronounce his name. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read this story very slowly in Latin. I want you to follow along and maybe just say it quietly to yourself as I'm reading it aloud. Caecilius est in horto. Caecilius in horto sedet. Servus est in atrio. Servus in atrio laborat. Metella est in atrio. Metella in atrio sedet. Quintus est in tablino. Quintus in tablino scribet. Kerberus est in via. Cocuus, that's kind of a hard one to say, Cocuus est in culina. Cocuus in culina dormit. Kerberus entrat. Kerberus circumspectat. Cibus est in mensa. Really more like mensa. Canis salit. Canis in mensa stat. Grumio stertit. Canis latrat. Grumio surgit. Cocuus est iratus. Pestis forcifer. Cocuus clamat. Kerberus exit. So we'll continue to practice with pronunciation all throughout the year, and you guys are actually going to have most likely a brief excerpt in Latin that you will have to say, or at least record yourself saying for a grade at some point. So trust me, you guys will definitely nail the pronunciation before too long. Okay, go on and watch the next video, which is a beginning review of nouns in Latin. Bye-bye.